My name's Michael Binnion. I'm from Canada, eh? And now I've already done two of the top Canadianisms. I've already apologized to you, and I've already said eh. So if you like that, after I talk to you, I'm happy to meet you outside. I'll put out and about in the woods in a sentence for you as well. So the reason I'm out of order is because they asked me to get us back on time a little bit, and Canadians, we talk fast, so they figured that maybe I could do that. I actually did some business with some people in Alabama once, and they said, you know, Michael, just because we talk slow, don't mean we think slow. Well, I'm not so sure that just because Canadians talk fast means we think fast, but I do want to talk to you about a big idea today, and also I'm going to have to introduce myself. The demise of the oil and gas industry has really been predicted quite a few times, and one of the most important times for me personally was in the 1970s, because I was making choices about high school and later university, and everybody said that we'd be out of oil by the 1990s. And so my career actually started in high tech, and that's going to relate a little bit to this presentation. Before I got in the oil business, spent 20 years in high tech. I swore I'd never work in oil and gas. Was yesterday's industry, and I was going to be in modern industries, and I did so for 20 years before I managed to get to oil and gas. And what I managed to learn getting into the oil and gas industry is that it is at least as high tech. I think often it's more high tech than the high tech industry, and it's turned out to be one of the most fun businesses that I've ever been involved with. And I'm currently the chair of Red Leaf Resources, which is headquartered in Salt Lake City. It's majority U.S. owned, but I am the CEO of our largest shareholder, which is Questar Energy, based out of Calgary, Canada, which is where I'm from. So today we're facing another time where people are predicting the demise of our industry. This time over not running out of oil and gas, but because we got too much and the environment and you know, increasing population, all these different pressures, which we're all very familiar with. And what I would say is the last time the industry managed to completely reinvent itself, as it's done so many times over the last 100 and some years. We reinvented ourselves with fracking, with horizontal drilling. We went from we are going to be out of oil and gas by the 1990s to that the U.S. is now an exporter of oil and gas. That's how well this industry was able to reinvent itself with technology. So we've seen a little bit of it today in this conference, but I'm here to tell you, if you don't already know, the oil and gas industry is in the process of reinventing itself once again. And what we're reinventing ourselves now is to eliminate emissions and to become a competitive product with alternative energy in terms of emissions and impact on the environment. And I think with the Inflation Reduction Act, as I sit up in Canada with a different approach to climate than you've got in the States, I think with that Inflation Reduction Act, America's going to become the world leader in an emerging new industry, carbon tech. And if you can think about in the 1980s, if you'd got into horizontal drilling or fracking, I'm going to tell you, I think that carbon tech is going to be that today. So that's that part there, because I know you're all pretty litigious down here. This part says you can't sue me. Okay, just an overview here of what we're trying to do. We're looking to propose the idea of the first mega site for eastern Utah with a wax processing plant. We want to incorporate, and I'm going to go into more details about this, carbon capture, low carbon energy into the site design to create potentially a zero emissions industrial park. And we think that this offers an opportunity for Utah to become a world leader in what I think is what will be this next 2 decades or so version of being in fracking and horizontal drilling 20-some years ago. We're partnering with key stakeholders. We've got an MOU with the Utes, who I was pleased to see here today, and also we've been working closely with the 7 County Commission. Happy to meet some more people down here at this conference on that as well. So just I mentioned already, we're based in Salt Lake City. We've got 7,300 acres right here in Uintah County. We're in Uintah County. We've been here over, I think, close to 15 odd years with some oil shale licenses, looking to commercialize some technology to exploit that as well. And this idea that I'm going to talk to you about was actually developed by our parent company, which I'm the CEO of, for Quebec, Canada, where we've discovered a shale gas field there that's about the same size as as what Mitchell found down in Texas. It's about 25 TCF of gas, and we've had a moratorium on gas production like New York State has, and our answer to the Quebec province has been we have a zero emissions hub as a way of addressing their concerns about oil and natural gas production there, and we've now realized if it'll work for them in terms of what they're concerned about, but the whole world's concerned about this, so that's why we're now talking to you about the same idea here. Okay, so this is the basic idea. It's to take a conventional industrial a park, which of course we all know has to have roads and power and water and sewer as services. And what we're saying is, well, why don't we just add on to those services an additional service? We will pipeline away and we will recycle or we will sequester your CO2 so that every business in that industrial park, doesn't matter what you are, you will have the ability to be a zero emissions business. So there's the simple concept to look at this problem from a consumer point of view more than from a producer point of view. And we think as part of that there will be an opportunity to create a center of excellence for these new carbon recycling technologies. And I'm not sure to what extent you all know about carbon recycling, but CO2 is, of course, recycled by Mother Nature all the time. It's produced by it's sequestered by plants, right? We take that, we end up releasing that, or it gets released. It then ends up being absorbed again by Mother Nature in the short carbon cycle. In fact, Mother Nature can turn CO2 into things like forests, and it can turn them into things people like us. It also does all of the things that we use in nature, like find industrial minerals or all kinds of things we find. Many of those processes that Mother Nature is doing all the time can be duplicated in a plant. So there are people right now today, and I've met dozens of them, that are making industrial alcohols, that are making cement, that are looking to make industrial minerals, carbon black, carbon nanotubes, dozens and dozens of technologies by taking CO2 in a plant and using it as a building block to make a product. So my daughter says to me, well, Dad, if that's possible, why aren't people doing it already? I said, well, there's a problem. There's been never a deposit on the can of Coke. Nobody ever put a deposit on a ton of CO2. I can tell you when I was young, we didn't recycle cans, right? But we do today. And that's because somebody put a deposit on that can of Coke, and all of a sudden everybody recycles. So the IRA in the United States has put a deposit on a ton of CO2. And entrepreneurs dozens and dozens of these companies are sprouting up all of a sudden saying, you know what? Suddenly I think I can make money recycling that CO2. So one of the companies that I ran into, they actually make vodka from CO2. It's called Air Company. It's based in New York State. And what they do is they're proving how pure the industrial alcohols they can make is by producing this vodka that you can drink. And I don't know if you know this, but this is leading now to college students at frat parties. You know, their mums call them up and say, what are you doing? And they say, oh, Mom, I'm sequestering some CO2, saving the climate. Okay, so this just gives you a bit of an idea in terms of the future, but the future is a bit now. I wrote an op-ed up in Canada 2 years ago. I call it The Race to Net Zero, and basically said, I think that with existing technologies, recycling, sequestration, and others, that oil and gas can become a low-emission source of energy, competitive with the alternatives. And I'm happy to have a race by 2050 who's actually net zero, because the wind and solar, they're not actually truly net zero either, right? They've got a lot of work to do as well. And I finished the op-ed with, and I hope we all win, because we're going to need all forms of this energy, and we're going to need it all. So let's hope we all win, and let's hope we all succeed. And these zero emissions hubs that I'm talking about are happening already in the UK, in France, in Norway, and Texas, and I'm trying to do some in Canada, and we'd love to do one here. The really big dream of this idea, if you can put these hubs together, if you can imagine all these, if we have a whole bunch of hundreds of industrial hubs in the United States, for example, hundreds in Europe is the concept there, that at some point in time in the future, 2050, let's say, then you just connect the hubs together, and now you've got an integrated economy that's of these zero emissions. So that's the big dream, or the big idea. Today, let's just see if we can get one hub done. This is where we are in Utah, so hopefully you're familiar with that map. The railroad's on there. You'll see our oil shale laces 40 miles up the Seepridge Road, and where our wax processing plant is there in Uintah County, just close to the line with Duchesne. We believe that all the elements of a zero emissions energy hub exist there. So this is the hub design. It's all the different parts that makes it, but as I said, it's an industrial park with all the services that you would normally want to see, but adding one service, the CO2 service, but also potentially hydrogen and other zero emission services. So these are some of the outputs that you would see from a park like that. All of those outputs relative to the providing of that zero emission service or CO2 service, they become inputs to the people who decide to locate their business there so that they now can become a zero emissions business as well. Okay, so why do we think we should do this? Hopefully it's super obvious. But it's diversifying the local economy. It's attracting businesses into the basin, creating a center of excellence for new technology that I think can be exported around the world, supporting local producers with additional egress. It also addresses the particular concerns here around air quality. We think there's potentially a large enhanced oil recovery that CO2 could be sold to, so we'd love to do a pilot project there. I know there's differing opinions on how effective that might be, but it's certainly worth a try. And we think finally it would strengthen the Uintah Railroad business plan. I'll talk about our anchor tenant, the wax processing plant, but I think that would improve diesel supply, lower prices, more secure diesel supply for the area. We think it helped to utilize natural gas production, which we heard just earlier. There's some problem with egress there. This would become a consumer. This industrial park could become a consumer, local consumer of that gas. And of course, as I said, for us, it's all of the above. We're talking about making oil and gas a competitive product environmentally, but we would happily work with solar and other forms of energy, including hydrogen. And in addition, we think we have the potential out there to accommodate some regional housing issues as well. So just let me check to see if I'm really getting us back on time or not. Okay, well, before I tell you this, I'll just want to tell you a little story about some scientific studies. And it turns out that there's been a lot of studies about conferences and speeches. And what they found out is that an audience like this is that there's about a third of you right now. And you're sitting there going, this guy's not supposed to be here. There's supposed to be a break right now. And this is so boring, and I just want this to be over, right? And then there's another 30 going, wow, like this is a really new idea. I want to hear the rest of this, like this wax plant and so on and so forth, and I have your full and complete attention. And then there's a final third of you that, according to the scientific study, are just daydreaming about sex right now. So I do want to just say, as I just wrap up here, I want to apologize because I'm Canadian to that first third of you. I'm sorry that I'm boring you. To the other third, the next third, thank you so much, because I'm really passionate about this project and I really appreciate your attention. And to the final third of you, I just want to say you're very welcome. Okay, so to get something like this going, it's a big idea, and we have got this 7,600 acres, and we have an air permit in place already for a wax processing plant. So this of course is another word for a refinery, but I think we're trying to do it in a different enough way. And I know that a lot of the producers here are trying to produce their wax in a different enough way that we think it's worthwhile to talk about it as a processing facility and an anchor tenant to a big concept for the basin. Basically be 44,000 barrels a day. It would look to take advantage of the unique qualities of the local oil in terms of its high lubricity, to turn about half of that into base oil for lubricant plants, which we think would be one source of higher margins to make this work. The second part would be to produce middle distillates, which is basically mostly diesel, potentially jet fuel, but mostly diesel. And where that would make margins is on saving the trucking and rail out and the rail and the truck back. So We think the opportunity there is for this plant to have margins from those two main sources. And some of the other benefits is if we can use about half of that locally as diesel and middle distillates, that saves trucking out, railing out, that saves railing back in. It frees up another 20,000 barrels a day of egress for producers. It also, we think, creates an economy of scale to get our industrial park, zero emissions industrial park, going. We've been working with some civil engineers on some of the site planning out there on our lands. And then I just should say that we've got a cooperation agreement with the Ute tribe, and I would say we are 100% recognizing that the Ute tribe has the water rights out there, and we're certainly hoping to work with them on water for all of this. Okay, so what's the next steps for us? Well, big ideas are hard to do, if people don't want it, it's not going to happen. If people here don't like it and want it, it's not going to happen. So we need a collaborative approach. We're going to need producers to commit for volumes. We've had some really good initial conversations with people. We'll need people to commit to the offtake for what we're producing. Some of that's going to be local in terms of diesel. Some of it will be to other lubricant plants for the base oils. We'll need industrial users willing to commit to this area that want to be low emissions businesses themselves. Or we want carbon tech startups that look and say, hey, I need a source of CO2. I want to focus on my technology. I don't want to have to worry about how do I get the CO2? I don't care. It just becomes a service in my industrial park. And then we're going to need government support, our partnership with the Ute tribe on the water rights. And then if anybody in the room has $1 billion or so to spare in their pocket, please come talk to me. Thank you so much for your attention.